Welcome to Experimental, the science show that runs trains on dead cows, watches robots have sex, and explains how you can become a fossil. Later on, we'll be breaking into houses in Southern California, explaining how you can run your fridge through your hi-fi speakers,
Really loud. A lot of sound.
and having fun in the test department's kitchen. But first, what to do with a dead cow? Welcome to Linköping in Sweden. I know it looks like it should be Linköping, but that's not what the locals call it.
Welcome to Linköping.
Told you. Experimental is here, not because it's one of the greenest cities in the world, with almost all of their buses and taxis running on biogas. We're not even here because of Amanda, the world's first train to run on biogas. No, we're here because of where they get their biogas from. That's right, Amanda and her friends run on cows. Traditionally, green types have been interested in using what comes out the back of a cow to make methane gas. But here in Linköping, they've gone one stage further. They use the cows themselves. It works like this. First, Daisy and her friends arrive at the local abattoir where, well, you really don't want to see what happens next. Suffice it to say that whilst this duck is swimming around, Daisy is being turned into pretty lumps of steak and mince. But even after most of her is wrapped in cling film, there's still about 40 kilos of bits left over. Some of you might want to look away, as those bits are about to come out of that pipe. Luckily, this soup of cow gut and skin is not squirted directly into a fuel tank. There's another process before Daisy finds her way into an internal combustion engine. Bertil Carlson is in charge.
The material comes in and is blended in the tank over here, and then it's heated up to 70 degrees to kill bacteria, and after that it's cooled down to around 40 degrees, and after that it goes to the two big digesters.
It's here that Daisy meets up with her last meal once more, in the form of cow manure. Once nicely mixed together, two different types of bacteria start munching away. The first is what's called acid-forming bacteria, which turn Daisy into simple molecules containing methane and carbon dioxide. Next to feed are methane-forming bacteria, which effectively release the methane, which can then be collected and pumped into vehicles like Amanda. But how many kilometres does the 50-ton-plus Amanda do to the cow? The answer is quite amazing, according to her inventor, Carl Liljehook.
Amanda needs 7 cubic meters of gas for 10 kilometers. And from a cow we get about 21 cubic meters of gas. So Amanda can go 30 kilometers on the volume from a cow.
That's, this far. Indeed, with almost 30,000 tons of Daisy bits being processed each year, Amanda could travel a total of 5 million kilometres. That's almost over 100 times around the Earth. All very green. But do the locals actually know what is powering Amanda?
Oh, in English, they run on
Well, they run on biogas and it's very good for the environment.
and we like that in Linköping, even if it smells bad.
Smell? Well, I guess that's the price you pay for green fuel.
Hello!
In a moment, Experimental will be robbing a house in California for its cheese. But first, the test department will recreate one of the world's greatest engineering achievements with a broomstick. Bobby is one of the test department's youngest members. He's really a particle physicist, prone to pondering the existence of the Higgs boson particle. But he's also a railway modeller. With a special interest in Scottish bridges of the Victorian era, which is what his two colleagues are discussing. As it's Bobby's birthday, they've decided to build him his very own railway bridge. And this is the bridge of their choice. The Fourth Rail Bridge. The real one is 2.5 kilometres long and made of 55,000 tonnes of steel. But our test department testers are going to recreate it with 2 chairs, 4 broomsticks, a few bags of sand, and themselves. This design is known as a cantilever bridge, the weight of a train being held partly by the beams above, which are in tension, and partly by the beams below, which are in compression. Clever stuff. But will it work when the top beams are replaced by our demonstrator's arms and the bottom beams by broomsticks? Let's see. Coming up on Experimental, our very own guide to being around in 20 million years' time. How sound makes ice cream, and how robots have sex.
Don't try this at home.
When Experimental heard that scientists were robbing houses in San Diego, we had a short ethical debate. Phone the police or join them. And we opted to join them. The robberies were masterminded by this woman, Heather Zarsky. But she's not a normal criminal. Indeed, she's not a criminal at all. She's an intern at the San Diego Police Department's forensic labs.
The major goal of this research project was to simply answer whether or not we could obtain DNA profiles from food evidence left at crime scenes.
That's right. This was not a robbery, but a scientific experiment to determine whether DNA from snacks eaten during the robbery could help nab the culprits. But how many criminals eat on the job? Quite a lot, according to our colleague, Tamara Ballard.
It's just always amazed me that someone will go to the trouble of wearing gloves to break into a place, but then sit down and have some snack.
Nefarious munchy evidence is not new at crime scenes. Just like fingerprints, a bite mark is almost unique. So dabbing bits of cheese with plaster of Paris is a key job in many forensic labs. But it's also Sherlock Holmes. What Heather and her colleagues wanted to do was to bring it into the 21st century, which is why they staged the robbery. That's right, these 5 volunteers were tasked not only to turn the house over, but empty its fridge into their stomachs. The idea was to try and identify which foodstuffs were likely to provide the best source of DNA traces from the felon's saliva. DNA is our genetic blueprint. It dictates everything: our height, our weight, our colour. No 2 people on the planet have the same DNA except identical twins, which is why it makes such a powerful tool when it comes to working out who ate all the pies. Amazingly, they managed to recover complete profiles from 43% of the foods munched during the experiment. But according to Dr. Patrick O'Donnell, the likelihood of the match depended very much on the nature of the food eaten.
Something with a hard surface such as cheese or a candy bar, it's just more efficient to recover human DNA from those as compared to having an open texture such as a sandwich or a hamburger.
So, here is Experimental's guide to what not to eat on a robbery.
Bonsoir, I am Pierre, your posh French waiter. On tonight's menu to catch a feast, may I suggest that hard English cheddar? Its texture is perfect for the swabber, but crackers are no. They are too flat. It is not enough contact with the lips, not enough saliva on them. The French cheese too, the brie, the camembert, it's too soft, huh? But the corn on the cob I can highly recommend. A solid bite is required and the gone contact is out. Très bon. Hamburger, pizza, they're hard to swap because of their open texture, you know, but it is possible, so keep them in mind. But my advice to you people at home is to stock your fridge with hard veg and hope that your feast is an health-conscious one.
a moment, fun in the test department kitchen. But first, a guide to immortality. Ever fancied living forever? Welcome to Experimental's guide to, if not living for 200 million years, at least being around in 200 million years. The trick is to get yourself fossilized. Step 1 is preparation. Only your bones will turn into fossils, so it makes sense to make sure they're as big as possible. So consume a lot of cheese and milk to build up the calcium, and a bit of weight training would help too. Next, when you're ready to die, choose your location with great care. An active volcano is good, so long as you only get covered with ash. Hot lava is a no-no. Far better would be the floodplain of some river just before heavy rainfall. What you need is for your body to be covered as quickly as possible by a nice fine clay, which over time will turn into sedimentary rock, its minerals gradually replacing your bones with stone. If you manage this trick, then in around 200 million years, there is just the chance that someone, or something, might dig your fossilized bones up and perhaps decide you're worth putting on display. Still to come on Experimental, the 190 decibel fridge. And robots that cannot keep their bits away from each other. But first, to the test department for some culinary science. Meal times in the test department are always fun. It seems that everything our demonstrators eat must be experimented on first. So on the menu today, scrambled eggs made in a paper pan. And for pudding, how about grapes? Cut them in half with a little bit of skin still connecting them, put them in the microwave and you can create plasma balls, the so-called fourth state of matter. But there are even stranger things in the kitchen just waiting to be investigated, such as spaghetti. You see, you may or may not have noticed that when you snap a dry piece of spaghetti, it almost always breaks in lots of places rather than just one. Based on the work of French scientists Sebastian Neukrich and Basil Odderly, the test department think they know why. Unless there's a weak point, most things like sticks will break in the middle. But when spaghetti breaks, the researchers found, the initial snap sets up what physicists call flexural waves. Powerful waves that for a split second cause the spaghetti to bend even more, causing a second or even a third or fourth break at different points. Apparently, you can see it clearly happening with a high-speed camera. But the test department have managed to bust theirs, which is why they've constructed this, the multi-break Pasta Analyzer 3000 machine. With the spaghetti strapped to the powerful braking arms, it's time to see what happens when approximately 100 strands of pasta explode into around 300. Should be good. 2, 3. Oh dear. Still, no need to go back to the drawing board. You can still have lots of fun, as long as someone else is clearing up.
Don't try this at home.
In a moment, we'll be off to Cornell University for a robot dirty movie. And we'll be finding out how not to impress the girls down at the test department. But first, let's turn up the volume. The little town of State College, Pennsylvania, was once voted one of the least stressful places in the United States. It's the place where physics professor Matt Posey and his colleagues Professor Robert Smith and Steve Garrett from nearby Penn State University like to come and hang out in ice cream parlours and dream of ways of making their lives even less stressful by getting rid of hum.
That's some good coffee ice cream.
And the hum they most want to get rid of is this, the hum of the common kitchen fridge. Or more accurately, the hum of the compressor inside the fridge.
Yeah, so right here is where the the compressor is in this ordinary ice cream cabinet, and this is where we put our vapor compression machine.
Our thermoacoustic machine.
That's right.
Thermoacoustic machine? That's right. Our profs want to use sound to make fridges both cool and quiet, which is kind of odd to brains like yours and mine. But these guys hail from Penn State's Thermoacoustic labs, where they have lots of fun fiddling with knobs and making all sorts of strange sounds. But how is noise going to help in wiping out 100 years of humming fridges? Well, let's have a look at how ordinary fridges get cold. We can blame the humming fridge on its inventor, a German by the name of Karl Gottfried von Lind, who invented it back in 1876.
Why are you blaming me? Yeah, there's a little hum, but at least now the food is not rotten.
The man's got a point. The food is not rotten because the fridge cools by what's called a heat pump, a device that compresses and expands gases to pump the heat out of the fridge and into the room, which is why a fridge is warm at the back. And it's the compressor that makes the hum.
Yeah, I told you this before.
What Dr. Posey and his team have done is to get rid of the compressor and replace it with sound. Sound so loud it could kill. It's all contained within this steel cylinder.
There's a lot of sound. 190 decibels is really loud. A lot of sound. For comparison, the loudest seat at a rock concert is about 110 or 120 decibels. A jet airplane taking off is about 145 decibels. So at 165 decibels, your hair catches on fire. So 190 dB of sound pressure level inside of this machine is really loud.
Yes, I think we've got the point. Inside the cylinder is a big speaker, which creates a lot of noise, but how's that going to cool a fridge? Well, when the speaker at the bottom of the tube vibrates, it creates a pressure wave at the top so powerful it could set your hair on fire. A bit lower down, and the pressure and the temperature is lower. The fridge works by placing some metal grills that run from the hot zone to the cool zone, like this. All you then need to do is pump the gas from the fridge cabinet through a pipe running through the cool bits of the grill, and another from the outside running through the hot zone. The effect is a heat pump, the heat being pumped out of the fridge unit into the air, just like an old fridge. But what about the noise?
The sound waves never get outside of the can. So you don't hear any of the sound waves out in the room, or when you open your refrigerator to go get some mustard, you don't hear the sound waves. Sound waves are contained inside of the pressure vessel. And that's why it's pretty quiet.
But is it really cool? Does it really work? Well, when the boys hooked it up to the chillers in their favourite ice cream parlour, the owners were so impressed they gave them a free tub or two of especially strong coffee ice cream.
Coffee ice cream? Good.
Hello!
In a moment, those amorous robots. But first, to the test department for a little gambling. The test department's Billy Bunter is taking some time away from the frontiers of science to relax and read his favourite magazine, Industrial Archaeology News. But all of a sudden, his attention is drawn to a review of the book of his dreams, called Fenland Pumping Engines by KSG Hind. It's lavishly illustrated and costs £24.99. But does Billy have enough money for the purchase? Oh dear. But then he has a cunning plan. Perhaps he could have a wager with his highly strung friend, Karina. Billy suggests a wager on the outcome of the so-called Mpemba effect. Amazingly, it says that warm water, say at about 70 degrees Celsius, will freeze quicker than cool water, say at about 30 degrees Celsius. It was a phenomenon brought to the attention of the modern world by a Tanzanian schoolboy in 1968, and now bears his name. It sounds so unlikely that Karina foolishly accepts the wager. So let's see if Billy's trust in science has earned him the money he needs. After an hour in the freezer, we're ready to find out. As Billy hoped, the cooler water is still not frozen. But it seems that the hot water hasn't frozen either. Or has it? Amazingly, Billy has won his wager. However, it seems that whilst Billy might be a top physicist, he's no judge of psychology. And finally, forget the birds and the bees. This is replicating robots. It had to happen, and now it has. Here at Cornell University, two of their most trusted professors managed to make a machine that reproduces itself.
We're trying to teach it to self-reproduce.
That's right. We're talking robot sex. The idea of a self-replicating machine is as old as the idea of robots themselves, but very few have actually gotten one to do it. That feat was left to Dr. Hod Lipson and his colleague Viktor Zykov in their lab at Cornell University. But before we watch the little buggers at it, what exactly is reproduction? Biologically speaking, we tend to think of males and females doing things with eggs and sperm, which is what we humans do quite a lot, although we can't actually show it on the telly. Snails, on the other hand, are both male and female, depending on which way the mood takes them, which is fine to show on the telly. And when we get down to the level of bacteria, the differences between male and female really cease to exist. So what do robots do?
Well, we're talking about self-reproduction, which is in fact a machine taking a supply of material and energy and making or producing a new machine.
Fine. Let's look at their robot's reproductive organs, if that's the right word.
In this half of the robot, we have the controller. This board and the processor has all of the information necessary to carry and implement the program of self-replication for the whole robot.
So that'll be robot DNA then?
The cubes, they have a capability to communicate with each other, and the processors, they collaborate in order to achieve self-replication successfully.
And now the moment you've all been waiting for. Let's see two robots humping. At last. Is that a kiss? Or have they gone the whole way? Yes, I think they have. But let's face it, that's not very impressive.
These robots are actually not very intelligent. They expect the cubes, the material, the energy to come in very specific times in very specific locations. If the material is not supplied in the right place and time, these robots will fail. The replication won't happen.
Okay, so perhaps it's not the robot porn you were hoping for. But do these little robots remind you of something? No? That's right, it's those bacteria from which all advanced life eventually mutated, which explains why Hod and Zykov have such big ideas for their funny little humping robots.
One application that comes to mind immediately are space applications. We want to be able to send robots to a remote planet to do some exploration there, but we want to be able to repair them autonomously. So we want to allow these robots to adapt to new mission profiles, to new tasks, to replace faulty parts, and to restructure themselves to whatever task they need to do.
So perhaps when robots like this take over a distant planet, or are circulating Alpha Centauri in the year 3010, the historians will be tracking the origins of their replicating life form back to two primitive professors in a little lab at Cornell University. Welcome to Experimental, the science show that measures hairy men's fingers and takes blood from young lovers. Coming up, how to turn your urine into wine. Develop a totally new way of moving around and make the perfect sandcastle. But first, it's that loving feeling. Experimental has come to Pisa in search of, you've guessed it, love. Ah, love. It lifts us up where we belong. It turns up the volume of life and makes everything beautiful.
Things that you would otherwise view as being completely irrational and crazy, you think make perfect sense, even if you're not lucid at all.
We all know that love makes us do some odd things. But until neuroscientist Donatella Marazziti from the University of Pisa came along, no one knew why wrapping your arms around the greatest thing in the world made otherwise rational people do the craziest of things. And where did she look for the science of love? Where else but deep in the arms of lovers themselves?
When you are in love, there are different hormonal changes.
That's right, all that crazy behaviour, that kissing, cuddling, giggly stuff that makes love lovely, can be explained by the changes in just a few chemicals.
Are you involved in a love relationship? Yes. Qualcuno?
Si. To arrive at this rather miserable reduction of life's greatest state, Donatella compared the blood hormone levels of 3 groups of students for her studies. One, a bunch of singletons. Another group who'd been together in a relationship for over 2 years, and a final group who were the newly in love group, and that's the crazy bunch she was most interested in.
Everything's brighter, everything's bigger. It just like turns up the volume and the vibrance on life because everything's so much better.
Donatella's love group were in the early phases of their relationship, a time when we are preoccupied with our lovers to the exclusion of all else.
When I really fall in love with someone at the very beginning, I ignore everything else.
You can't stop thinking about them. Even, like, I guess waiting around for phone calls is the worst part of it.
I just sat by the phone every day.
You are only interested in the partner, how to meet him or her, how to dress for him or her. So there is an increase in what we call grooming activities.
Like, you want to look your absolute very best when you see somebody, because, I mean, you know, you want them to be absolutely crazy about you like you are about them, and you want to look your best.
So what are the chemicals whizzing around the grey matter that makes a greasy smear on the cheeks so fantastic? When Donatella looked at the blood from her love group and compared it to the singletons and those jaded souls in long-term relationships, she found that her lovers had much higher levels of the hormone cortisol. Oddly, this chemical is a stress hormone designed to make us nervous, which might explain that she loves me not syndrome that so many lovers sweat about. A second brain chemical that went out of whack in the love group was serotonin.
The most exciting finding of our study was that we found that romantic love in the early phase of the relationships present a decreased level of the serotonin system.
Serotonin is, in part, a mood-altering chemical, and the levels Donatella found in her love subjects were so low that if they weren't diagnosed as lovers, they'd be diagnosed as suffering from obsessive-compulsive disorder. But there's another shocker on the way.
Men become in some way more similar to women, and women become in some way more similar to men.
And that's all down to testosterone, the hormone that makes men men. Fall in love, boys, and the chemical that gives you your manhood drops away, explaining that sudden interest in female pursuits, like staring lovingly into another's eyes. Women, however, experience a boost in testosterone, which, luckily, does not make them instantly bearded, but does make them want to do things in bushes that we can't show on television.
Don't try this at home.
In a moment, we'll find out why these girls have abnormally long ring fingers. But first, some vintage fun in the test department. Toby is 5 days into an experiment to monitor every aspect of his health, which was great until he started it. However, since that day, it's deteriorated fast. Today, he's convinced he's got swollen lymph nodes, a definite sign of dengue fever. But on double-checking in the learned journals, he realises that that slightly stiff neck could be a symptom of meningitis instead. Luckily, his temperature is normal, but those sweats, could he be having a heart attack? But then perhaps that cramping pain could be a symptom of type 1 diabetes. And with that latest worry, Toby decides a quick urine test is in order. Huh? Blood in the urine. It can only mean, well, at least 85 conditions, some of them quite nasty. But let's check back through Toby's day to see if we can find the possible cause. Ah, beetroot. It seems that Toby could be one of 14% of the population who are beetroic. When most people eat beetroot, the substance that makes it red, beatenin, is destroyed in the stomach. But if scientists are right, the presence of oxalic acid in Toby's stomach means that the beatenin survives to get absorbed by the colon and ultimately dissolved in the urine. The result is an impressive colour, very like red wine, which gives Toby the idea of a rather mean joke. Coming up on Experimental, the boffins from Cornell University who think they've discovered a new way of...
Running is like running.
It's like walking.
But first, we go in search of some man digits. Meet Dr. Mark Brosnan, a psychologist at the University of Bath. He's not exactly God's gift to rugby. In fact, he's far more happy lurking in libraries. You could have worked that out for yourself if you'd had a chance to look at his hands.
The ratio of the ring finger to the index finger can potentially tell a great deal about somebody.
That's right. Study someone's fingers and you can tell how much of the hormone testosterone they were exposed to when they were in their mother's womb. Testosterone is the hormone that makes men big, hairy, and square-jawed. But that's not testosterone's only effect.
Exposure to prenatal testosterone is argued to influence the structure of the brain as it's developing within the womb. And that structure of the brain then goes on to inform how we learn and develop in childhood in combination with other factors, but it's provided the building block for what's going on to form the adult brain ultimately.
Testosterone is funny stuff. Not only does a good slug of it in the womb result in the fetus developing what some would call a male brain, but they'll also end up with a ring finger longer than their index finger. Because women in general receive less prenatal testosterone in the womb, they tend to end up with ring and index fingers that are pretty similar in length, and a brain that is less interested in cars and football. Men, on the other hand, tend to have a small difference in the length of the two digits. The bigger hit you got in the womb, and the bigger the difference. It may also be that you'll have developed a brain that is more interested in blokey-type things. By now, you're probably looking at your own index fingers and wondering how blokey you are. But look carefully. The average difference between the ring and index finger for a man is only 2%, hence the calipers. And don't worry, ladies, If you find you have a longer ring than index finger, you can still wear a dress. It doesn't mean you're a man. It only means that, like the test department's Melanie here, you may have more of an interest in explosions and other things that men find fascinating. And that's what got Dr. Brosnan thinking. It's often assumed that engineering and physics require a strongly male brain. And if that was the case, you'd expect people working in these sciences to have longer ring fingers than those working in the more, shall we say, effeminate disciplines like the social sciences. To see if this theory held any water, Dr. Brosnan measured the fingers of both sides of the academic divide. 100 digits later, he had an answer, but not the one he expected.
There were some unexpected findings in that the hard sciences, the physicists and the chemists, actually had a digit ratio and the finger length pattern that was typical of females, in that their finger length, their testosterone finger and their estrogen finger, looked to be of a similar length, which counteracted the original arguments that scientists would be extremely male thinking, would have extremely long fourth fingers. Whereas my research was contradicting that and saying, actually, a great deal of scientists have got very long index fingers, more typical of the female profile.
This was rather embarrassing for the idea that a long ring finger was an indication of a male-type brain. So Experimental decided to commission Dr. Brosnan to measure the fingers of these aggressive little creatures, the University of Bath's women's rugby team. Here, there was no problem. Each and every one had a ring finger that towered over their stumpy little index digits.
4. Okay, that's the Premiership finger.
See? Also means you're mad.
Premiership wife. Also means you're a man.
Not me here in that.
It does not. I could be a premiership wife.
And indeed, she is conclusive proof that testosterone can give you a male brain, a male finger, but not necessarily a male body. Still to come on Mad Labs, Billy Bunter plays with Nettles. And we learn the science of sandcastle building. But first, what not to do at the dinner table. Anu is meant to be cooking lunch at the test department, but is more interested in demonstrating the strange characteristics of custard, a liquid that behaves like a solid. Don't believe me? Well, let's watch him play. After a brief whisk of the cheap powder variety, it's time to test its liquid properties. And I think we can say that custard is quite definitely a liquid. But what happens when you try and turn it into a ball? Suddenly it turns into a solid. What's happening? Well, it's all got to do with these little fellows, starch molecules. So long as the custard is just pouring out slowly, the starch molecules will slip along quite nicely in a liquid kind of way. But make the custard move too fast, and the starch molecules get tangled up with one another, whereupon the custard turns into a solid. As soon as the custard slows down again, the starch molecules untangle, and the custard behaves like a liquid once more. So next time someone tells you not to hit your dinner with a hammer, just smile and tell them it's an experiment in molecular physics. Before we end, Experimental will be doing strange things with pickled onions and attempting to build the ultimate sandcastle. But first...
Hello!
Experimental has come to Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, in search of these two chaps, Binoy Srinivasan and Andy Ruina, authors of a seminal work in Nature on the most efficient ways of moving from A to B on two legs.
Just ridiculous and sounds silly, but it showed that the least tiring way to get from one place to another if you're going slowly is to walk. And the more tiring way is to run.
All so laughingly obvious, you might say. But when they started analysing their findings in a computer model of the human gait, they made a rather interesting discovery. Their models suggested that there was another gait that was more energy efficient at intermediate speeds between walking and running.
It's sort of like a hybrid of walking and running.
It's like walking.
It's like running.
Is like running.
It's like walking.
It's walking, but with an aerial flight phase. Now, you can't really know how to do it unless you put one foot in front of the other. That's more important.
Before we reveal to the world the wonders of this new way of getting from A to B without a taxi, we better find out exactly what goes on when we walk and run. A walk is like an inverted pendulum. Your foot lands, producing a force peak like this. It then pushes off, producing a second force peak. The key to walking is that both feet never leave the ground at the same time. When we run, things are a bit different. Apart from heavy breathing, we actually bounce off the ground, flying between steps. On the computer, this results in a single force peak, like this. And that's what got the boys thinking. According to their computer models, there was another possible gait, the pendular run. The legs would remain fairly straight, like in a walk, the heel hitting the ground, the foot pushing off, but unlike a walk, there would be a short hop, where both feet were off the ground. For speed slightly above walking, this theoretical gait was extremely energy efficient. But could anyone actually do it? Well, it took a lot of practice, but eventually the boys mastered it. A new way of getting from A to B was born. But is it any good?
I don't think that this particular research is going to have any direct applications for anybody. It does have a direct application for science in that it helps us understand what is running, what is walking, and it might be that it helps us understand a new gait, which perhaps some people use sometimes.
Experimental disagreed. It seemed to us that getting from A to B faster than walking, but without the puff of running, was a great idea. So we persuaded the profs to hold a masterclass for a man off the street, in the hope that he'd go forth and evangelize this new way of moving.
Relax your upper body and give it a try. Good try, though.
I'm giving up, man. I don't think anybody can do this.
Well, it's not true. I don't know what the this is, but I can do it, and these guys in Michigan can kind of do it, and it seems like you can't do it.
Sadly, it seems we chose the wrong man off the street. In a moment, we'll be finding out how science might help Miss Sandy Feet here avoid this. But first, let's have some pain in the test department. Billy Bunter is in the test department garden doing something very, very stupid in the name of science. He wants to test out a number of supposed cures for common garden stings. And what better person to test them out on but himself? First up, our old friend the nettle. Allegedly, rubbing dock leaves on the sting will give the required relief. And judging from the look on Billy's face, it does seem to help. But why would it? To produce a stinging sensation, the body has to be subjected to either a strong acid or its opposite, a strong alkali. Nettle stings are acidic, so jabbing them with an alkali of roughly the same strength should neutralise the stinging effect. But we think a slightly stronger alkali, like bicarbonate of soda, might work better. Next up, a wasp sting. These are alkali, so don't use bicarb, go for something acidic to neutralise it. Theoretically, nettles might work, but you'd have to get them to sting you only where the wasp stung. Far better, go for something like a pickled onion with its nice, acidic, vinegary sauce.
We'd like to point out that no test department demonstrator was hurt in the making of this film. They blinking well were.
And finally on Mad Labs, beach science.
Maybe we need some shells.
Pretty much everyone who has ever visited a beach will have had a go at building a sandcastle. But there are some, like Sandy Feet, yes, that is her real name, who take things to extremes.
Everybody can build some kind of a sandcastle. It's not rocket science.
Well, it might not be rocket science to Sandy, but you head inland to Clark University in Worcester, Massachusetts, and to the labs of Dr. Arshad Kadroli and Dr. Azeda Samadani, and it suddenly becomes rocket science. Their work is all about how each individual grain of sand in a sandcastle sticks together. And the key is this: not water, but the way water forms what they call liquid bridges. The ability of water to stick to individual grains and pull them together.
You can do this while you're sitting at home. You can take some spit, lick it a few times between your fingers, and join it with your thumb and take those fingers apart.
If you look closely,
You'll see a little
small cylindrical,
liquid bridge between, in this case, my finger and my thumb.
and that can introduce extra attraction force between grains.
That is a liquid bridge.
It's the surface tension in water that pulls the grains together. No water and the grains of sand will behave just like little balls, which will run freely downhill. Add a bit of water and the liquid bridges form, sticking the grains together. So it's water that makes grains of sand stick together. The big question, though, is how much water you need to create the stickiest sand possible. Too much, and you get an unstable gloop. Too little, and this happens.
Oops.
You might think that a sandcastle falling down is no big deal, but imagine if this was the side of a mountain. Hundreds of tons of earth or sand crushing down into a village. It happens. And studying why it happens on a granular level is the true purpose of their work.
So if you look at the sand in desert, you can see that the angle is much lower, and if you look at the sandcastle, the angles are much higher.
We are trying to determine the basic equations, basic models, which will help us determine the conditions under which granular materials will flow or be stable.
So what is the magic formula for a sandcastle? Well, it turns out that it's 1 part of water to every 8 parts of sand.
They stick to each other, they form those liquid bridges between each other, and effectively the size of the grains now increased, and therefore they cannot flow as easily. So this is a granular jamming.
And what does Sandy Feet think of this application of science to her art?
Well, you know, theory is nice. Labs are nice. We need science to explain our world to us.
In the future, we would like to study the real sand and see if you mix water with real sand, what happens, and perhaps you get much higher angles than what we observe here.
We do not quite know how to apply this directly to real sand yet.
For real-world experience, I mean, if you really want to figure out what makes sand stand, you got to get to the beach, you got to get sand in your socks, you got to get dirty.
She's got a point, but you also need people in labs. People who understand why your sandcastle stands up or doesn't. Welcome to Experimental, the science show where people sniff each other and eat worms. Later on, we'll be entertaining in the test department, using radio transmitters to track this little chap, and finding out how to survive in the wilderness with the aid of an aluminium can and some chocolate. But first, let's bend it with Beckham. Experimental wanted to know how top footballers manage to bend the ball so much that when they kick it, the similarly overpaid goalkeeper at the other end can't get his hands to it. Unfortunately, it costs a lot to film the likes of David Beckham, so we filmed this lot from Northern Ireland, Antrim versus Armagh, in the hope that one of their players would bend the ball really, really well, and then we could ask him. We waited and waited.
Nice ball! Oh.
And after 90 minutes, nothing remotely Beckham-like had happened, much to the disappointment of both us and the crowd. So we went off to Belfast Queen's University to meet Dr. Cathy Craig, who spent years studying not only why Beckham shots bend, but why goalkeepers can't get their hands on his balls. It might not sound like the sort of academic research a great brain should be engaged in, but ball spinning is big business.
Spin is really something that is quite difficult to judge, and if you look at lots of sports nowadays, people do use spin to their competitive advantage in cricket, in baseball, tennis, all these sports. And like sports manufacturing companies now specifically develop shoes that allow you to put more initial spin on the ball at contact, which essentially will mean the ball will bend more in the air.
Being able to spin a football really well means that you can earn a lot of money. So much that Cathy couldn't afford a Beckham type for her experiment, so she settled on the next best thing, an automatic ball bender. It does everything those expensive silver-clad feet can do, and more.
So spinning balls essentially create something called the Magnus effect or the Magnus force, which disrupts the airflow around the ball. So imagine that the ball is given side spin. On this hit on this side of the ball will cause it to rotate in an anti-clockwise, counterclockwise direction like this. So what happens is the ball heading in this direction, the air will flow faster around this side than this side, pushing the ball back in towards the goal.
This spinning ball creates a pressure differential, the pressure building on one side and reducing on the other. As a result, the ball bends as it heads towards the goal. All very clever, but it still doesn't explain why the bloke with the gloves can't get his hands to it. To answer that question, Cathy teamed up with the University of the Mediterranean to create a virtual bend-it machine capable of bending balls any which way she fancied. All she needed now was a goalkeeper. Sadly, the only thing he has to do is say whether he thinks the ball will go into the goal or not. So don't expect any entertaining dives into the lab wall.
Fun.
Cool.
This experiment was essentially to test the effects of spin in human behaviour. So what are the variables, optic variables, or what do the eyes pick up in terms of information when the ball has spin on it?
After a few hundred spinning balls, there was no doubt about it. Get the ball to bend like this, and the keeper just can't work out where it's going.
We set up like a virtual reality environment where we positioned the ball and then we simulated where the ball would arrive and put spin in the ball, no spin in the ball, and we asked people to make judgments about the future arrival place of the ball. Would it be a goal? Would it not be a goal? So we set up an experiment where balls had trajectories with spin and without spin. Counterclockwise spin and clockwise spin were the two spin variables, and then there was no spin condition. So we had 4 conditions where the ball arrived outside the goal and 4 where the ball arrived inside the goal.
Sometimes it was hard to see, to guess where the ball, if it was going out or not. It was a bit different than actual real life actually working, but it was very close to it, so it was useful and it was cool technology.
She's not 100% sure yet, but Cathy speculates the reason might be this: a monkey. Like ours, its brain is good at working out the trajectories that recur naturally in nature, like the path of this falling nut. But unfortunately for it, and goalkeepers, the strange parabolic trajectory of a spinning football simply does not occur in nature. So its brains and those of its distant cousins like us are simply not designed to work out where the spinning ball is going to go. So, in the unlikely event that this County Antrim goalie is ever confronted by a really good spinning ball, the long-suffering home crowd will just have to accept that he never had a chance.
Hello!
In a moment, we're off to Montreal to meet a man who studies the smell of women's armpits. But first, let's head to the test department for a hot date. Billy Bunter is in a bit of a tizzy. He was so busy with his cold fusion experiments that he totally forgot he'd invited his lady friend over for drinks and nibbles. Hence the panic cleaning, sprucing up, and the application of cheesy music. Phew, all we need now is something nice to drink. A quick chill in this handy freezer. Let's just hope beer is her thing, Billy. Still, at least they'll be cold. A little while later and Billy is giving it his all. But it seems she doesn't want to do any nibbling. Her lips fancy something much cooler. Luckily, Billy is prepared. Cold beer might not be a cocktail, but at least it can be stirred. Which is when disaster strikes. Within seconds, the beer turns to ice. What's happening is a phenomenon known as supercooling. Under pressure, like in a beer bottle, the freezing point of water drops below 0 degrees Celsius. So when Billy pulled it from the freezer, it was still liquid. When he opened the top, the pressure inside the beer bottle dropped. But the beer remained liquid in what physicists call a supercooled state. Billy's big mistake was to stir it. As soon as the stick went in, it provided a point for the ice crystals to form, and within seconds, the whole bottle is frozen. Sadly for Billy, the test department is a very hot place, and the ice soon melts. Still to come on Mad Labs, why birds don't fall off trees when they sleep, the future of food.
Don't eat the wing. You hold the wing, make sure that the abdomen kind of pops out between your fingers, and you just pop the whole thing in your mouth.
And the randiest dormouse in the world. But before that, it's armpit time. Thank goodness we humans are not like dogs. Unlike them, we only seem to use 2 and a bit of our major senses. Sight,
Tom!
sound,
Tom! Hi!
Hi.
And a bit of touch.
Steve.
The only thing we don't do is this: sniff. Or mark our territory with smell. Or do we? Well, according to this chap, Dr. Johan Lundström, a cognitive neuropsychologist from McGill University in Montreal, we do use pheromones.
We know that most species we have looked at, they do use pheromones in a way of communicating. So I think it would be highly unlikely if we humans also do not use pheromones.
You'll find his lab's a bit of a whiffy place to hang out, because each of these tubes is filled with the body odour of one of his subjects.
So again, pen number 1.
His theory is that we retain the ability to identify members of our family and close friends by their body odour, just like dogs do, even if we don't know it. To prove it, he's asked various people to wear cotton pads under their arms, and it's those scented samples that make their way to his labs.
How are you?
Then a brave volunteer is asked to sniff a number of samples. Some close family and friends, some the pong of strangers. The results are remarkable.
Yeah, let's see this one.
Okay. When it comes to picking out your friend, you had 9 out of 9 correct. When it comes to picking out your sister, it was 9 out of 9.
9 out of 9.
And then picking out yourself, you were slightly worse, but still very good. 8 out of 9 times you picked the right body odor coming from yourself.
When subjects were put into a scanner and fed with the whiff of their loved ones, a specific part of the brain lit up. Usually, when we smell something, parts of our primitive brain are activated. The primitive brain is the oldest part, and we share it with all vertebrates, like frogs. Normally, it's this part of the brain that governs smell and emotion, which explains why the whiff of food instantly produces the desire to eat. The scent of loved ones, however, bypasses all this and is processed by higher parts of the brain, such as the neocortex that deal with thinking and attention. So why, if smell is so important, do we spend so much time trying to disguise it?
That's a very interesting question, whether our use of deodorants or perfume actually mask these odors and are taking away a lot of information that we could actually benefit from. But I still would not recommend anyone to stop using deodorants, because not using deodorants and having a foul body odor is by far more negative than not submitting some type of message if you want to pick out a super partner.
And that begs another question. Super partner dogs don't use deodorant, and their sense of smell is said to be up to 10,000 times more developed than ours. So why then do they spend most of their time with their nose buried in each other's bottoms?
Hello.
In a moment, we'll be opening the experimental restaurant in downtown Montreal and going camping with the test department. But first, let's meet Brian. Brian is an ornithologist with a lifelong ambition. He wants to observe a bird falling off a perch when it falls asleep. By night, he watches jays. And by day, he watches owls. But he's never seen so much as a wobble. And this is scarcely odd, because millions of years of evolution have made sure that perching birds do not fall out of trees whilst asleep. It's all down to what's called the flexor tendon, a neat bit of stringy stuff that runs from the back of the leg, over the knee and down under the ankle to above the toes. When a bird goes to sleep, it squats down. The string tightens and pulls their claws together around the twig. The more relaxed they get up top, the tighter the claws become down below. Indeed, some claim birds have even been found dead, still attached to a twig. So, Brian, I'm afraid you're wasting your time.
Don't try this at home.
Before we eat some worms, let's head to the test department for a game of football. Summer in the test department, and our demonstrators have football fever. Lab coats for goalposts, the exquisite precision of a free kick, but of course, there's always someone determined to spoil the party. Still, after some deliberation, the demonstrators hit on an ingenious solution to their problem. It's called a ladder, a simple device that can get anyone from the ground to a roof in seconds. However, this being the test department, simplicity is not the name of the game. Our demonstrators aren't stupid enough to go up a ladder without fully analysing their physical limitations in order to find out the limits of the safety envelope. Still, they need not have bothered with a blackboard. What they needed was this, part of Lawrence Cliff's 287-page seminal work on ladder safety. Deep within its geometry are contained these pearls of wisdom. A ladder should be placed so that the base is 1 metre out per 4 metres up. It can be made slightly more safe by employing a footer. But if they employed a classical 1 foot on the ground, 1 arm on the ladder technique, useful if you want to eat a sandwich, they'll actually make things more dangerous. This unsteadies the ladder and makes it more likely to flip. According to Clift, the best way to foot a ladder is this. Place both feet on the bottom rung as far apart as the ladder will allow, and then remain as still as possible. Do this, and you can safely get your ball back. Time and time again. Still to come on Mad Labs, a dormouse hunt in the south of England. But only if you can stomach this next item. Here's a question. What's a more environmentally sustainable form of protein? This or this? Well, the answer, according to nutrition expert Patrick Owen of McGill University, is the bamboo worm.
Extremely high nutritive value, very high in protein, about 53% protein. Compare that to 20% beef. Has almost all the vitamins and minerals that you need. It really is such a really nutritious food.
Half the world has no problem with eating things like bamboo worms or insects like crickets. But in the West, well, the thought of eating a bug is enough to reintroduce yourself to your last meal pretty fast. And that's why Experimental has travelled to Montreal.
Now it's time for dessert.
We want to see if we can help Patrick persuade a bunch of lily-livered Canadians to tuck into a 3-course insect, worm and bug meal.
I've travelled in parts of the world, Papua New Guinea, some parts of Africa. They just relish eating insects. For them, it's a delicacy. Welcome. Nice to meet you.
So let's welcome our guests to the Experimental one-night-only restaurant, where all the ingredients are guaranteed to be as offensive to the Western palate as possible. And the starter is crickets.
So you don't eat the wing. You hold the wing, make sure that the abdomen kind of pops out between your fingers, and you just pop the whole thing in your mouth, remove the wings with your teeth. Bite them off until the wings are left in your hand.
With the leg?
Yep. Whole thing.
Salty.
You have to eat the head and everything. You just ate the abdomen.
I like that.
Yeah, I like that one.
Okay, we've proved that a Westerner can eat an insect without throwing up. But are they any good for you?
Weight for weight, they have at least the same amount of protein of beef, if not more. What's more important too is the quality of the protein. So it has all the amino acids that are lacking in other foods. So just by eating crickets, you're going to have a complete source of protein.
The other big advantage of eating crickets is their efficiency. Although some people eat a lot of them, cows are actually really bad at converting grass into meat. For every kilo of cow you eat, the cow has had to eat 10 kilos of grass. Your average bug manages to convert 50% of what it eats to protein. All pretty impressive. But if you really want to get into the Protein Super League, you're going to have to stomach the bamboo worm. Weight for weight, it's more than double the protein of beef. And they're pretty popular in some cultures. But will any manage to get as far as a Western gullet? Fantastic. But remember, these are extreme gastronauts we're looking at here. Nutters who know no taste fear. The chances of your average Western lard ass giving up the burgers are slim. Well, not according to Patrick.
Think about how we've evolved in terms of our taste according to our culture. 10 years ago, we would have been disgusted with the thought of eating raw fish.
The man's got a point. In the UK alone, $25 million worth of Japanese food is consumed in restaurants each year, much of it in the form of sushi. So what are the chances of worms being the next big thing?
The look is definitely what sets you off, but the taste of it is definitely good. So if it wasn't so, I don't know, scary. once you overcome the first fear, then you're okay. It's fine.
Whatever they may think, we all might have to get used to eating creepy crawlies in the future.
What we will be facing is a protein crisis. I mean, beef is taking up a lot of the Earth's resources, right? We have to clear up a lot of forests to make way for cattle.
Insects and worms, on the other hand, can thrive in diverse ecosystems, producing proteins and other nutrients far more efficiently than those cud-chewing monsters.
An apple a day keeps the doctor away, but perhaps it's the worm inside that's actually the reason.
Before we leave you, we'll be meeting the saviour of the not-so-common dormouse and tracking down one of the reasons for its demise. But first, let's go camping, test department style. Are you getting bored of lighting a fire using a match? Well, here's a more interesting way, because we're going to be lighting a fire with a tin can and a bar of chocolate. So how's it done? Well, first, you break up a piece of the chocolate. And of course, you need to test if it really is chocolate. Then use what's left to polish the bottom of the aluminium can. It takes a while, but in about 20 minutes you can turn the can into a pretty good mirror. Now all you have to do is focus the sunlight onto some tinder wood, and with a bit of patience, you'll get a roasting hot fire going. Okay, so it's not as quick as a match, but it's a much more satisfying way of getting your buns toasted. Experimental has travelled down to Dorset in the southwest of England in search of one of Britain's most important indigenous mammals. No, not llamas, they're from Peru. No, we're after a beast so rare that few ever get to see one, and, well, nor did we. Luckily, we're just down the road from Paynton Zoo. It's full of common species, elephants, zebras, and all those run-of-the-mill type animals. But hidden deep within, under the watchful eye of Julian Chapman, head mammal keeper, they've got what we've been looking for. The finest example of his species, known as Big Daddy. And here he is, Muscardinus avellanarius, better known as the common dormouse, or perhaps more correctly, the exceedingly rare dormouse.
What's happened with the dormice is over the years since, for example, the Second World War, probably about 60% of woodland's been felled and ridiculously large amount of hedgerows have disappeared. And these were the places that the dormice lived in.
The zoo, along with many others, is trying to reintroduce the dormouse, partly for its own sake, and partly as an indicator of the health of the wider ecology. Happy dormice mean happy plants, insects and birds.
By using the dormouse, which everybody thinks is cute and cuddly and very friendly, and they are important as a species, but by using those, we then save the whole woodland and the whole of the hedgerows, which have really been hammered since the Second World War.
The idea is to use Big Daddy as a stud to produce as many baby uber dormice as possible, which will be released into the wild and monitored over the coming years. So let's see if he can cut the mustard.
Well, this is the daddy's mate. He's about to put them together, and hopefully they'll get on well, and we shall, after that, we shall just leave them to it, I think.
Hello.
Ah, well, let's face it, they have only just met, and there aren't cameras about. But with luck, this marriage will produce dozens of dormice ready for release. But before they go, each will be fitted with a microchip to aid tracking. So a little bleep will tell you exactly where they are, even if you can't see them. Armed with a receiver, Experimental headed into the Dorset countryside once more. Sure enough, we soon had a bleep. At last, the chance to see one of Britain's rarest mammals in its natural environment. Ah, perhaps not. Sadly, it seems that the mouse we were tracking is one of the 275 million creatures that end up inside the gut of domestic cats each year. Welcome to Experimental, the science show that makes slugs crawl on razors and explains why women cheat on men. In a moment, we'll be off to Japan to give fish a little acupuncture before they're eaten, tasting the strongest chili in the world, and having one of those fantasy moments with the bloke off the bus. But first, let's find out why women fancy thugs once a month. Liverpool, England, famous for its football, cathedrals and music. Yeah, it's the hometown to the Beatles and all that love me do stuff. And that's why Experimental has come here. We're looking for love, but not at the Cavern Club. We're heading up to the university to find out why it is that women change their minds about the one they love once a month. Meet Rob Burris of the University of Liverpool.
There has been some research that's shown that women, when they are in the most fertile phase of their cycle, are more likely to go out to a singles nightclub without a male partner and to go there in more revealing clothing. And women have also been shown to fantasize more about men who aren't their partner, and also to sleep with men who aren't their partner more frequently during this fertile phase of their cycle.
That's right, boys. Once a month, that normally loving partner of yours may think about straying, especially if she sees something big or butch. Apparently, this is totally understandable, according to Tamsin Saxton, a behavioural biologist at the university.
In evolutionary terms, when you're picking a mate, you're picking somebody who can help you have healthy children. And that you're looking for two distinct things. One of them is somebody who can give you resources, so who can maybe provide you with presents or money, or give the same sort of things to your children. And the other is somebody who can give you healthy genes, because if your children have healthy genes that can deal properly with the environment, then they're going to grow up and be healthy and strong themselves.
That's right, guys. Women want two things, even if they don't know it. On the one hand, they want a man who's going to stick around and change the nappies. But once a month, it seems they're only interested in one thing: hunky men that will produce hunky children, even though they'll never be around to push the pram. And it seems it's not just women who can spot a rugby shirt once a month. Rob Burris believes that men, too, have a subtle biological clock that changes as their partner nears ovulation. To prove it, he created a number of faces, which he hoped would typify the extremes of masculine and feminine features found in male faces.
A masculine face is usually typified by quite a strong jawline, thinner lips and a wider nose, generally lower down eyebrows. And conversely, a feminine face will have the opposite features, so larger lips, a thinner nose, a bigger forehead, bigger eyes. And during the most fertile phase of a woman's menstrual cycle, she'll be more interested in masculine-faced men, while during the rest of her cycle, she'll be more interested in feminine-faced men.
So that's the women. But do blokes become more interested in masculine faces at certain times of the month too? To find out, Rob took a group of men who were in relationships and tested their ability to notice the masculine features in the photographs.
And we just got these men to rate the faces, rate these composites for dominance on a scale of 1 to 7. And then we're able to compare between men whose partners were in the fertile phase and men whose partners were in the non-fertile phase, the average scores they gave to these dominant and submissive faces.
He found that men, like Steve here, were more likely to notice the more masculine faces in the pictures if their partners, like Julie, were ovulating, suggesting that a subconscious awareness of their partner's fertility has set them on a course to become jealous of these potential love rivals.
Jealousy can be a very useful thing, but it can also be very dangerous. So if a person's overly jealous, then that can lead to their relationship being dissolved, and of course no one wants that. So it pays men to be most sensitive, most jealous, when their partner is most likely to cheat.
So be warned, girls. If all of a sudden that ugly thing in the rugby shirt looks great, he won't in a day or two. Worse still, if you make a move, that normally placid boyfriend of yours might get all butch and do something silly. Still to come on Experimental, super fresh sushi in Japan, and what not to do on an electric fence. But first, the test department will attempt some vivisection. Poor old Billy Bunter has had an accident shaving. Still, while swooning under the tender ministries of his lady friend Karina, he has an interesting thought about razor blades. It can be summed up in this simple question. If you take one slug and ask it to crawl across one razor blade, will there be one slug or two at the end of the process? Shall we see? First, Is a razor blade sharp enough to cut a slug in half? Well, if it can do this to a piece of chicken, then the answer should be yes. Next, we need some apparatus, in the form of the Slug Tester 3000 machine, a simple construction of two platforms connected by a razor blade. On one, we shall place a fine example of the species Arion hortensis, or garden slug. On the second, we place a piece of its favourite food, lettuce. Now, will our slug brave the razor blade in search of the lettuce? It's a tense moment, but after a brief examination of the blade, the slug is off. The reason a slug is not cut in half by the blade is because it never actually touches it. Slugs secrete a sticky mucus which they glide over. So although our little slug here can go over the razor blade quite happily, it's actually cheating. In a moment on Experimental, the source of the world's strongest chili. But first, a bit of sushi acupuncture. Fish is more than just a food in Japan. They're a national obsession. They like them fresh out there, so fresh they don't even bother with the cooking bit. They just chop them up and serve them out. But that's not enough for this man, Toshiro Orabi. He wants his fish so fresh, they all but swim onto the plate.
When I went to Osaka, which is a big city, I could never eat the fish there. Because I grew up next to the sea in a fishing town with beautiful, clean waters, I was afraid of the fish in the city.
Orabi believes that even if the fish are transported alive and kept in restaurant tanks, the stress they are under taints their flesh, making them, in his opinion, inedible. One day, whilst watching TV, he had one of those rare eureka moments that most inventors can only dream about. The program was about acupuncture, and he remembered back to when he used it to ease a back problem. The needles had certainly relaxed him, and perhaps they could have the same effect on the fish too. Although it's hotly contested, some Western scientists believe that acupuncture works on the central nervous system, closing off certain neurological gates and blocking the pain impulses from parts of the body. It's widely used as a form of anaesthetic in China, and Orabi wondered if you could adapt it to keep fish in a state of torpor whilst they're being transported.
So I needed to know the basis of fish biology and how they live. When I knew all that, I just had to try spiking them, here and there and, well, all over. After I tried it on 2,000 fish, I eventually found the right point.
His technique has been so successful, it's led to a whole industry.
I'm using the needle on this fish to put it to sleep, but it's a company secret, so I can't show you how. There you go. So, just like that, it's now asleep. But it's not dead. It can still move its mouth and gills.
Although more like an aquatic frontal lobotomy than the sort of acupuncture we humans subject ourselves to, Orabi claims that his technique is based on the same principles as the Chinese art, and simply puts the fish into a state of torpor. We wanted to ask the fish, but he put the lid on the box before we could. The reason Orabi spikes his catch is that once knocked out by his needle, a sleeping fish can be transported anywhere in the world, but remain so relaxed that their flesh tastes exactly the same as it would if it had been plucked out the sea that morning. And well, it could do. It's long been known that stress has a huge effect on the quality of pork and beef. A relaxed animal will have a lot of sugars in the form of glycogen in its muscle fibres. If the animal is ill-treated or gets a fright just before slaughter, its increased muscle activity causes a sudden drop in the glycogen and results in pale, flavourless meat. The same may well be happening with fish. But if so, will the flesh of Urabi's needle-relaxed fish taste any better? Well, there's only one way to find out. We decided to put Urabi to the test with an experimental taste challenge. The fish on the left has had the acupuncture treatment. The one on the right has been taken from the restaurant's storage tank. Will he be able to tell the different fish apart?
OK, let's give it a try. This one first. This is my fish, and the one here is the standard fish.
Well, on the basis of that extremely scientific test, I think we've proved that spiked fish do taste better. Still to come on Experimental, the world's hottest chili. How to imagine yourself doing this, and how to light a fire with water. But first... It's an idyllic day in the countryside and you're out with the kids for a walk. Suddenly, your little lad wants to get a bit closer to nature.
Go behind the bushes, son.
And evermore, you're racked with guilt. Because you never told him about the dangers of peeing on an electric fence. But just how much damage would little Johnny have done to himself? Here, in the test department, we're trying to find out. Meet little Johnny number 2. A slightly modified shop dummy with an anatomically incorrect appendage. The idea is to measure the amount of current that would reach the delicate bits of a real live Johnny, hence the crocodile clips and voltmeter. So, we have a surrogate human. What about the wee-wee stuff? Where does that come from? Well, the test department does have a ready source, but for reasons of taste and decency, we cannot show it. So now for the experiment. A stock fence is capable of giving a whack of up to 10,000 volts for around 0.3 milliseconds. But just how much of that voltage will be able to travel up our sample and hit Johnny where it hurts? Let's see. Oh, little Johnny just got a jolt. Not enough to kill him or even do any lasting damage, but more than enough to make him walk to the public toilets in future. In a moment, we'll be camping with the test department and sniffing in Canada. But first, let's find out who it is you share your body with. Bobby here is a fairly typical Western male. He's about 6 foot tall, and his skin covers an area of about 2 square meters. That's about the size of this blanket. Although Bobby considers himself Mr. Clean, he shares his body with quite a few others. His hair will almost definitely be infested with microscopic follicle mites, despite the shampoo. His mouth will have about 100 species of bacteria living there, despite the toothbrushing. Go deeper, and you'll find his gut contains trillions of bacteria. On the outside, his skin is home to about 1 million bacteria per square centimetre. But don't worry, Bobby, most of them are friendly. And there is one place in your body where there is no bacteria. It's inside your bladder. Despite its dirty toiletry associations, urine is usually completely sterile because your kidneys filter out all the nasties. Before we leave the experimental labs, there's still time to find out what to do with a dampened campfire and experience a few smelly fantasies from Canada. But first, to the heat of the subcontinent. This little green shriveled thing is believed to be the hottest chili in the world, and this is Patrick, who rather stupidly is going to eat it. Whilst our hapless tester is being put out, we figured it would be a good idea to try and track down the source of this killer chili. We had hoped this would mean a ticket to an exotic location in the tropics. But it turned out to be a trip down the road to green and grassy Dorset in southwest England. That's right, these humble polytunnels house what is claimed to be the hottest chili in the world. The Dorset Naga, a chili so hot that it almost qualifies as a chemical weapon. But who'd grow these tongue killers? These two, Joy and Michael Michał.
We didn't try to grow the hottest chili in the world. It just sort of worked, and it's as I say, it's the best kept secret in the world. Only Joy, me, and 60 million Bangladeshis knew about it, really.
It all started when Joy and Michael bought their first Naga seeds from this man, local greengrocer Mr. Khan.
Naga chili come originally from Bangladesh. You cannot get it anywhere else, and they are really, really, really hard. I know them for more than 15 to 20 years, and they're very hard, but despite the hard, they have some nice flavor, which is we people like it, you know.
Mr. Khan's Naga seeds seemed to like the Devon soil. They grew big and strong and were soon sprouting strange shriveled fruits that to an aficionado are most pleasing to the eye.
This is what, for me, is the ideal Naga that we want. Sort of long, thin, wedge-shaped. For me, it's an incredibly attractive chili. The trouble is, there's a bit of beauty in the beast. It's lovely to look at, but it really is hellish.
So hellish that Michael and Joy decided to send their chili to America for official testing on what is known as the Scoville scale. It's the chili equivalent of the Richter scale for earthquakes, starting with 0 for the sweet Italian pepper and ending up at 16 million for pure capsaicin, the chemicals in chilies that gives them their hotness. It was invented by Walter Scoville in 1912 and is based on a panel of testers tasting chili essence in a sugar and water solution. The idea is to keep diluting the chili until the taster can no longer taste any trace of it. Normally, the test is done with a panel of 5 testers, but with Patrick still being cooled down outside, only Horace was prepared to do the tasting. Amazingly, his results were much the same as those from America, where the Michałs claim they got a rating of 970,000 Scoville units. This would make the Dorset Naga over 300 times hotter than the jalapeno pepper, and almost twice as hot as a habanero pepper, which scores a paltry 500,000 Scovilles. However, it's still not quite as strong as the pepper spray used by some police forces. That clocks in at over 2 million Scovilles. So you have been warned. Yet to come on Experimental, this woman lounging about on the sofa. But first, let's sizzle in the test department. Being a freezing cold day, this little test department demonstrator has decided on a spot of Girl Scoutery, with a crackling fire and a sausage on a stick. Unfortunately, there's always someone out to spoil the fun. But wait a mo, you can put out a fire with water, but you can also light one with the good old H2O. Unfortunately, you also need the sun, which is conspicuous by its absence. So we've decided to cheat with a rather large light. Good, let's get on with the demonstration. First, whack a stake into the ground. Then, fill a plastic bag with the wet stuff and tie up the top, So you've created a bubble of water, which you can then hang from your stake. With a bit of tweaking, you should be able to use the water bubble as a lens to focus the sun's light, just like a magnifying glass. Enough to start a fire. And it works in practice too. Look, there's some smoke. And yes, amazing. We have fire. Well, no, actually. Although it worked fine in rehearsals when the sun was out, it clouded over when we went to film, and our big light simply wasn't strong enough to light our fire. So our demonstrator had to revert to that well-known chemical reaction called a match.
This is completely unacceptable. Either you do an experiment properly, or you don't do it at all.
Don't try this at home.
What it does is it creates a
prototype robotic film.
What's the difference between reality and imagination? Is thinking about a bottle of champagne? Or a nice fur coat? Or even that bloke from the bus? The same as really having that bloke from the bus. You don't think so? Well, you might be wrong. You see, according to the work being carried out at the Montreal Neurological Institute in Canada by Dr. Yelena Georgievich, as far as the brain is concerned, real and imagined are pretty similar, at least when it comes to olfactory imagery, or smells.
Basically, our main goals with the brain activation study was to see what regions in the brain are activated with olfactory imagery.
The team believed that the same regions of the brain would be involved whether we were thinking of the smell or really smelling it. To find out, they stuck their subjects in a PET scan and gave them a whiff of something like
strawberry.
Only Dr. Georgievich had a trick up her sleeve. Sometimes there was no smell of
Pine.
But when hearing the word pine, amazingly her subjects not only smelt it, but their brains reacted in the same way as they would have had the smell really been there. So it seems our brain can faithfully recreate the scent of a nice new coat, but can it recreate its feel, or for that matter, the feel of the bloke from the bus with the same effect? Does the same part of the brain used for real sight and touch light up when they're just imagined?
This was very consistent to what other researchers have found in other senses. For example, in vision, in audition, with the sense of touch.
But why is the brain so good at imagining reality? Well, one idea is that it's the mechanism by which we make sense of the world. We can imagine the rewards for a course of action, and that might spur us on to take that action. But we can also imagine the consequence of failure, and that might deter us from doing something stupid. But as with so much of the human psyche, whilst our powerful imaginations may have evolved to keep us safe, we can also use it simply to have fun. But remember, keep your thoughts to yourself. Welcome to Experimental, the science show that collects earwax and creates boy bands. In a moment, we'll be sniffing a few cows in California, helping Billy grow his hair with stinging nettles, finding out how Nelson's wee-wee got into Toby's wine, and making a mechanical bird or two in deepest Florida. But first, have you ever wondered why Asian women have small breasts? Chinatown in London. The experimental team is getting to grips with a sticky problem. That's right, the earwax of Southeast Asia.
This one.
That one. It's like that.
So that one.
That one. Half, half.
Half and half. Really?
Yes, there's a difference between European earwax and that found in much of Asia. And the world expert on the subject is this man, Dr. Koshiro Yoshiro from the University of Nagasaki. His work with earwax is helping us to understand how early humans conquered the world. Earwax and global domination.
There are two types of earwax in the human being. One is dry type, like this, a powder-like substance that is frequently seen among East Asians. And the other one is wet type, sticky, like this. Yeah? This is common among Caucasians and Black Africans. Yeah, something like this.
Intrigued by this geographical phenomenon, Dr. Yoshiro asked colleagues around the world to collect nail clippings and blood samples from just about every ethnic group on the planet. They analysed the DNA from each sample, fed it into a computer, and looked to find out if there was a genetic difference between people with dry earwax and people with wet wax.
We found that a single gene determines the visible human genetic trait. That is earwax. Yeah, that is surprising, I think. Yeah.
But the amazing thing was the distribution of this gene. It supported a controversial theory on how humans first conquered the Earth.
Well, the human being originated in Africa. They started to move from Africa to all of the world. That was 100,000 years ago.
Somewhere along the line, the dry earwax gene became dominant amongst humans living in China, Japan, and much of Southeast Asia. Then, around 85,000 years ago, something happened which made some of these people cross to North America. The first of the waves of immigration that brought the dry earwax gene at least as far south as Bolivia.
Our experiment showed that the Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, Native Americans, and some Bolivians have a common ancestor. They were living around Lake Baikal 20,000 years ago.
Rather surprisingly, the dry earwax gene is responsible for some other rather personal traits.
Do you use deodorant? No. You don't use deodorant?
No. No.
You don't?
No.
Yep, you've guessed it. In the same way as the gene blocks the production of earwax, it also blocks the production of stinky sweat. This might explain why deodorants don't sell too well in Japan.
Okay, I smelled your under here.
No.
Okay.
Oh, but Dr. Yoshiro believes that his earwax gene has something even more surprising up its sleeve.
I believe that Asian women have a smaller breast size than other women, for example, Caucasians and Black people. So the size of the breast tissue, I believe that it is related to dry earwax.
But how to prove Dr. Yoshiro's theory?
Could I touch your... Not even just a little bit?
No.
Oh, go on, I'll pretend. No?
No, don't.
Definitely not?
No.
Still to come on Experimental, how to turn instant boy bands into instant fighter pilots. And how these birds might help them get better planes to fly in. But first, let's see just how stupid Billy Bunter is prepared to be in the name of science. Every now and again in the life of a scientist, young and not so young, one comes across the work of a colleague that will literally change your life. And this is that moment for Billy Bunter. You see, he's just come across US patent number 6596266, a potion to cure male pattern baldness using Nettles. It's just what Billy needs. Perhaps that highly strung demonstrator Karina will fall for him with a full head of hair. True to the test department's ethos, why buy it when you can make it, Billy hightails it off to the garden in search of the ingredients. And soon, he's boiling it all up and dreaming of a new quiff. But what is male pattern balding? Well, it seems to be a genetic characteristic, and it's caused by the hormone that makes men big and hairy in the first place, testosterone. There are enzymes in the body which change testosterone into another hormone, dihydrotestosterone. And it's this hormone that leads to the hair follicle shrinking and ultimately falling out. There's a chemical in Nettles that's part of this potion which claims to prevent the change from testosterone to dihydrotestosterone and perhaps result in a healthy head of hair. So let's see if it works. Well, Billy, if you'd bothered to read the whole patent, you'd have noticed that the required chemical is found mainly in the roots, not the leaves, and is only part of the brew. Coming up later on Experimental, the planet-killing cows of California, and the aeroplane that thinks it's a bird. But first, a tactile vest from Holland. At Experimental, we heard that a Dutch company, TNO, were working on a new system that could help both boy bands and jet fighters strut their stuff. So we headed to Soesterberg in Utrecht, as fast as we could. When we looked through the door, it blew our minds. These three boys only met 20 minutes ago, and already they've got a dance routine worthy of the Eurovision Song Contest. This impressive feat was all down to their attire. This little number, the tactile vest, brainchild of Jan van Erp, with this man, Hendrik Jan van Veen.
The tactile vest is a display for your skin, very similar to the way a monitor or a set of headphones is a display for your eyes or for your ears.
Experimental has come across one or two things like this in the past, a hugging shirt of Rome or the Singapore chicken vest. But this seems to be taking the idea to a different level. These guys are being controlled by a computer, switching on and off more than 100 of these little vibrators. All you have to do is react and you can dance. Well, sort of. Luckily, inflicting the world with pre-programmed boy bands is not the only use for this tactile vest. Thanks, boys. Jan hopes that his electronics will soon be found in one of these.
A fighter pilot is a very busy pilot. He has to pay attention to many different systems and has to perform many tasks at the same time. Obviously, he has to fly the aircraft when it's not on autopilot. But he also has to deal with lots of different types of information, and it means that his eyes are really occupied by reading displays, looking outside, and doing different things.
By bringing touch into the equation with the tactile vest, Jan hopes to bring another sense to the fighter pilot's weapons. If their eyes or ears miss some vital information, like an incoming missile, a vibrating widget should alert them to the danger.
The principle we're using is the same principle as the one that you're used to, which is a tap on the shoulder. Somebody taps you on the shoulder, you know which way to look.
Well done, Biggles. But what's this chap doing in the shorts? Well, it's just another of Jan's uses for his tickly little vest. By hooking up his vibrators to a GPS system, he's managed to create a navigation device for cross-country runners. No more losing your rhythm checking the map, just keep jogging until a little tickle sends you to the right or left. But whilst controlling butch men with vibrators might get some people excited, it seems that Experimental finds tickling boy bands the most fun.
Don't try this at home.
In a moment, we'll be trying to lift a test department tester with a glass of water. Going bird watching in Florida and sniffing cow whiff in California. But first, let's head to the test department to take mathematics a little too far. Down at the test department, Toby is getting all morbid. It's the birthday of his greatest hero, the British Admiral Lord Nelson, who died over 200 years ago.
Hello. Bonjour.
Still, he's trying to convince Horace that it remains possible to be at one with a great man. Toby's argument is based on the following facts. Every time Nelson breathed out, approximately 2.4 times 10 to the 22, yes, 22 noughts, molecules of gas came out of his mouth. And the fact that there are about 1.04 times 10 to the 44 molecules of gas in the Earth's atmosphere, Toby has worked out that this will mean that approximately 5.4 molecules of the gases that were once in Nelson's last breath will be in each breath of his. Whilst he's feeling a bit chuffed with himself, Horace is doing some calculations of his own. Given the fact that there are about 5.7 times 10 to the 46 water molecules on Earth, and that Nelson would have drunk about 52,000 litres of the stuff in his life, there's a good chance that Toby's glass of wine will contain an awful lot of the atoms that were once part of Nelson's urine. On its way, the ultimate boy's toy, the plane that thinks it's a bird. And fun things to do with a hot water bottle. But first, what's choking the planet? This might seem a green and pleasant land, but it's not. Look up to the hills, and you'll see they're all clouded in the asthmatic's favourite, smog. A nasty mix of gases made up of what scientists like to call volatile organic compounds. Welcome to the most polluted valley in California, San Joaquin. And what's causing all that yellow muck? Well, there are the common suspects, heavy industry plus 6-lane highways choked with SUVs, but there are some who claim there's another villain. It's Daisy the cow, and over 3 million of her ruminating friends who also live in the valley. That's right, 3.2 million cows means 3.2 million bums doing this. According to some, each of the cows manages to push out as much polluting gases as, what, 1 car? 2 perhaps? Well, no. The annual figure bandied about for the output of Daisy's gastric tract is said to be the equivalent of the output of no less than 85 cars. And it's not really her fault. Like any mammal, the amount of wind she produces is influenced in part by her diet, and unfortunately for her, she mainly eats grass, which is one of the hardest foods to digest. So hard that if we saw Daisy in half, we'll find a stomach with 4 parts, each filled with billions of bacteria, which ferment all that green stuff, until they've managed to turn it into something that Daisy can actually digest. And it's all that fermentation that produces the nasty gases that pass from Daisy's front end to her rear end. So far, so repellent. But can we really blame cows for producing all that nasty yellow haze? Well, that's what this man, Frank Mitterlau, from the University of California, Davis, wanted to find out. The figure for Daisy's polluting habits comes from a study done way back in 1938. At the time, they thought the smog was largely produced by methane, and since cows produce a lot of methane, the blame was laid on them. But now we know that smog is made up of a cocktail of volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, and they're found in everything from exhaust fumes to paint or underarm deodorants. And yes, they are found in the stuff that flies out of the back of Daisy.
So what we are doing is we are trying to measure these hundreds of different VOC, volatile organic compounds, that form smog.
Welcome to the world's largest fart chamber, the UC Davis biobubbles. The bovine equivalent of that old jam jar in the bath trick. If you don't understand that, ladies, just ask your boyfriends about it.
We use the biobubbles to house animals to measure air quality impacts. We have one air inlet on the one side and an air outlet on the other side. And the difference between outlet and inlet is what the animals and their waste and the animal feed produces by means of air emissions. So what we're finding is that in general our total emission numbers are much lower those that are currently on the books.
How much lower? Well, Dr. Mittelauer's provisional results indicate that in 1 year, one cow does not produce the same amount of VOCs as 85 cars. No, it's closer to 10 cars, which is still a lot. But hey, if you want cheese, milk and yogurt, you're going to need cows. So, if you're concerned about the smog, why don't you carpool, take the bus, or better still, walk. But whatever you do, lay off the beans yourself. Still to come on Experimental, the morphing spy planes of California. But first, to the test department. Water is such fun. Often at test department towers, the team will frolic in it, play with it, and make drinks with it. Sometimes they'll even cook up new and innovative uses for it, like using it to lift a person. How can this happen? Well, as you can see, water on its own is not very good at lifting anything. In fact, it's rather good at allowing things to sink through it. But if we were to put it into this fancy water bladder 3000 machine, and all of a sudden, water's lifting properties are revealed. To get the pressure up, all we have to do is pour the water into this pipe at a great height. There. So why did she rise? Well, it's all to do with the weight of a column of water. Imagine our little tube went all the way to the bottom of the deepest ocean. As our submarine drops into the depths, the pressure of the water increases the deeper it goes. By the time it gets to the bottom, at 10,660 meters, the pressure is a staggering 1,068 kilograms per square centimeter, enough to crush all but the toughest of subs. Even with the pressure of a 3-meter column of water pressing down on it, the pressure in our hot water bottle rises to 0.3 kilograms per square centimeter. Not only enough to lift a person, but also to blow holes in it. Meet Dr. Rick Lind and his team. Big boys with a little dream. The morphing spy plane. They want to make a plane so maneuverable that it can fly over a city and ultimately swoop down and into a room.
The real application for aircraft is in urban operations or flying within a city. We can imagine if someone released a dangerous gas in downtown Los Angeles, we could have a small aircraft that could fly throughout the city into parking garages, between alleys, inside of buildings even, to look for this dangerous substance.
The plane needs to be not just small, it needs to be bird-like too.
Our real objective is to build airplanes that actually can do what birds do. They can fly where birds fly and do maneuvers like birds can maneuver.
Aeronautical engineers have always been inspired by birds, but until now most wings have been rigid and fixed, like this. But Dr. Lind's wings are flexible, and for good reason.
We have large airplanes that fly above the cities and high in the sky, but we need airplanes that can operate at treetop level or even car level.
And that's where all this flexibility comes in. It's about making the wing adapt to different situations. In both birds and planes, the shape of the wing determines what the beast can do. Long, thin wings are great for distance flying, but pretty useless when it comes to dodging around in small places. For that, you need short wings, but they're only good for short flights. To make the ultimate flying machine, you need a wing that can change to suit the conditions, long and thin to get you there, and short and stubby to whiz you around. King of the wing change is the seagull.
One of the first things we looked at was what shapes does the seagull change into during its flight. how does a seagull change its shoulders, elbows, its muscles, and its feathers when it wants to land versus taking off? How does a seagull change its shape to fly into a strong wind?
To find out exactly how they did it, Dr. Lin sent out a spy of his own, who took thousands of pictures of birds in all aspects of flight.
The photographs that we're looking for are gliding pictures of birds. So you'll see that as the birds attempt different maneuvers, they'll change the shape of their wings to change the aerodynamics. And this is of particular interest to us because then we can mimic these shapes using mechanical actuators on our morphing airplanes and try to accomplish the same type of gliding capability.
Once they knew the wing shapes they wanted to mimic, the hard part really began.
Well, as you can see, we've installed motors and electronics on the airplane that will physically cause the wing to bend and rotate about the shoulder and elbow, just like a seagull would change its wing in flight.
But the real key to getting a wing to flex like a seagull's wasn't so much the actuators.
Our wing design differs from conventional airplanes mostly because it's a very, very thin wing. Because I have that thin wing, our wings can bend and twist in ways a large aircraft could not.
Okay, but can it actually fly? Pretty impressive. In fact, the boys are so confident that they've cracked bird flight that they're beginning to get a bit more relaxed about the type of birds they're observing down at the beach. And finally, on experimental, a cooking lesson from the test department. Toby here is keen to find out if eating asparagus can make your urine smell of the green-fingered vegetable within 15 minutes. So let's see if it's true. Well, now we've got a sample that, yes, seems to smell of asparagus, let's test it out on a random selection of the great British public. Sadly, the first two seem only to smell that standard urinal whiff. But the third, who does seem to be a bit of a plant, is convinced of the aroma.
Asparagus? Asparagus. Very interesting.
Interestingly, Horace has been in the test department library digging out a few papers on the subject. You see, in 1952, scientists shoved asparagus-tinged wee under the noses of 115 people in the UK and found that only 40% could smell the whiff. The ability seemed to run in families. If you can smell it, it's quite possible, therefore, that your dad and granddad can too, which suggests that genetics might be involved. Even stranger, studies have shown that Israelis and Chinese people are far less likely to be able to smell asparagus in the wee-wee, even when it's definitely there, than Europeans are. However, despite over a century of studies, no one seems to be sure exactly what it is in the asparagus that makes the whiff.